For this class we're going to be looking at some more of the other meditations that come under the heading of the observation of the body. And we're going to move a little bit more quickly from here, I hope. And just to remark that in the different versions of the Mahāsatipaṭṭhānasutta, without going into details, but they all include similar kinds of practices in this section under the observation of the body, but there are quite a few differences in details. So for example, there might be some things which are missing from the Pali one, which are found in other versions. For example, I think one of them is like the contemplation of food, which is a part of the body and sustaining the body. And that contemplation is not mentioned in the Pali version, but it's mentioned in one other version, and so on. So these kinds of variations are found, and so I think it's best to consider this whole section as being more or less like a sort of a container that you can sort of put any of the practices on body contemplation that you find throughout the suttas, that any of them can be sort of put in there if you want. And so these are the ones which happen to have been put in the Pali version, but I don't think that they're, it means that there's any kind of necessarily anything essential about that. Other ones could have been chosen. Nevertheless, the ones that are here are practices which, for the most part, are found many times throughout the suttas, and obviously quite significant practices. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one. On the postures. Furthermore, monastics, when a monastic is walking, they clearly know I'm walking. When standing, they clearly know I'm standing. When sitting, they clearly know I'm sitting. And when lying down, they clearly know I am lying down. Whatever posture their body is in, they clearly know it. Okay, so this one very fairly simple, very straightforward instructions. So it's in telling us to be aware in whatever posture that we are in. This particular passage is quite unusual. This may be the only place that it occurs. I can't recall off the top of my head, but certainly not found all that commonly. And it's obviously very closely related to the next practice, which we'll be looking at in a minute. And that the next practice is in fact found in many places. So this particular one is very general. And so it can apply specifically in meditation contexts, so for example doing walking meditation and so on. It also applies outside of meditation, and so the basic idea is you should be aware of whatever posture that we're in. And so this is talking about the major postures, if you like, the sort of general way that your body is, and while the next one is more specific. In terms of meditation itself, obviously most of us when we meditate doing sitting meditation and also walking meditation we've talked about. It is possible to meditate in the other postures. You can do standing meditation, although it's usually not very comfortable to do standing meditation for any period of time, but no reason why you can't do it. Lying down meditation you can do. Falling asleep meditation unmindfully also is a likely consequence of that. But hey, if it works for you, then no problems. Okay, doing short lying down meditations, especially if you've done some yoga or something like that, can be a good idea. But generally, if you try to meditate for a long time while lying down, you'll probably end up falling asleep, which is not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, your meditation's not going to progress very much. So this is something, and this kind of practice is something which we have a special opportunity to pay attention to while we're here on retreat, because we don't have deadlines, right? We don't have anywhere we have to be, right? No, you don't have to run across the road to get out of the way of the cars, and you don't have to hurry around at work to get the job finished in time. All of those pressures that normally cause us to lose mindfulness, none of them are here, so we can walk carefully wherever we're going, and it's perfectly fine. Just take as much time as you need to do whatever it is that you want. I'll just give you one example of this practice, as it talks about in the Suddhimagga, that one might determine that he would always, when he was going for alms round, that he would always walk into the village being mindful of every step. And so if he didn't, then he had to go back and start again from where he'd left off. So he'd leave where he was staying in the forest, he'd sort of walk out about 20 steps or something, and then he'd realise he lost mindfulness a few steps back, so he'd have to go back to where he lost his mindfulness and then keep on going. And so that's how we go for alms round every day, and all the villagers were looking at him and thinking, that's a very strange monk. So it's just like an example of a kind of practice that you can do if you want to do this, but you know, these practices, you don't have to do anything special, you know. It's not like, they don't have to be like particular practices that you do. A famous story of Ajahn Chah when he first went to IMS, the Insight Meditation Society in America, and everyone was doing the very kind of slow Mahasi style walking, sort of picking up their foot and moving it down, everything like that. Ajahn Chah thought it was hilarious. He'd never seen anything so funny in his life. He just called out to them, "Get better soon, I hope you get better." In the forest tradition, it's always just the idea, you just do things naturally. Yeah? You don't make a big fuss about it. Yeah? If you walk, you just walk. You know, don't turn it into a big deal, but you just bring mindfulness to those kinds of things. And so what this is doing is it's giving like a continuity and a context, so that your awareness will naturally deepen and so on during the day. And this is one of the reasons why, you know, when we can practice them like this, we don't have to be so, you know, you don't have to sort of push yourself in meditation. Meditation becomes a lot easier, it becomes a lot smoother. Meditation shouldn't be a struggle, right? You just be mindful, do whatever you're doing, keep your mind positive, keep your mind happy, and then when you come to meditate, just sit down and meditate and flow into it, and it should be a natural thing. You know, one of the things that we have, the subtle problem that's kind of crept into our modern meditation culture is that we have the idea that our meditation is there in order to solve our problems, right? So meditation is there because we're stressed, so we're going to then do some meditation so that we don't get stressed, right? Meditation is going to be there because we're feeling depressed, so we're going to do some meditation so we're not depressed, and all of those kinds of things, right? So it's like everything else you do in your life, okay, is the thing which is dragging your meditation down. That's what's messing your mind up, and your meditation is there to fix your mind up, okay? And it's exactly the opposite of what the Buddha was teaching, okay? What the Buddha was teaching was manage your life so that all of those things you do in your life are creating positive, helpful, mindful states of mind, which will then be a support for your meditation, okay? So if you're seeing your life as being opposed to your meditation, right? You say, my life is dragging my meditation down. You're doing life wrong. Okay? Do life differently. Yeah? Make your life into a life that is going to support your meditation. Okay? And so all of those things which the Buddha was talking about, the practice of generosity, the practice of kindness, right? The practice of helping others and serving, the practice of keeping your precepts, the practice of restraint, all of these things are things which are empowering your meditation. Okay? So use your life to support your meditation. Don't use your meditation to try to cure your life. Right? Easy, isn't it? Yes. Okay. Moving on. Any questions about this particular practice before we go on? Yeah?
In terms of, if you wanted to mix up your meditation from walking, standing, sitting, is there any particular way? I know you probably just say it's natural, but say I wanted to stand for 5 minutes and then walk for 10 and then sit for half an hour and vice versa. What's the, is that good?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Yeah. But just when you do it, you just understand how each posture affects your mind. Yeah? And that's all. And then you can just use them as appropriate in your meditation. Yeah. So that's the only thing. The only thing I'd say is that on the whole, you know, it's a good idea to use a sitting meditation at those times when your mind is the most clear and the most bright. And you know, standing and walking meditation, maybe use it other times during the day. It's just a general guideline. Yeah.
I'd like to standing meditation. What did you do? Stand, observe your breath, or?
You can just stand and just be aware of your posture, or you can do any other kind of meditation while you're standing as well. Yeah.
Could you please elaborate more about how can life support the meditation?
Okay.
All this time I was gathering around.
That's right, yeah. Okay, well, think about one of the kinds of meditation that the Buddha taught actually very often, and he taught especially for lay people, was a meditation on sila nusati, recollection of your sila. Right? And so what is your sila? Well, your sila essentially is basically everything that you've been doing before you've come to sit to meditate. Right? And so you can come and when you start to meditate, you can understand that in terms of your 5 precepts if you want to. It doesn't have to be that specific, but you can do. And so you can just, when you begin to meditate, recollect the 5 precepts, each one in turn, and think, have I killed any living beings? Right? Have I gone hunting today? Have I gone fishing? No. Have I murdered anybody? No. Okay. And then you can rejoice in that. You say, actually, I've lived today a life of compassion. I've done what I can. Not only have I done what I can to not hurt and harm any living beings, but when I've had the opportunity, I've done what I can to help living beings. And, and you can recollect all the acts of kindness and so on that you might have done during the day. And then you can think about the second precept. You think, have I stolen anything today? Right? Okay, there was that time in that shop and I was really wanting to pocket that little extra thing and then I didn't. So I resisted the urge to go shoplifting and I cancelled that bank heist that I was going to do. So, but I mean, we do have opportunities to steal things and so on, maybe at work and different situations, and you can always fiddle things around and get a bit more. And so, but on the other hand, you can choose to be honest. And, you can just think of all of those times when you chose to be honest and where you lived, practiced like right livelihood, So you said, okay, my life should be, I should work, make a living, and then use the money that I get from my livelihood to support myself and my family, and just recollect that you've done that, and so on and so forth. So you can go through each of the precepts and remind yourself that actually during this day you've been keeping these precepts. Maybe you haven't kept all of them, right? Maybe you had some drinks at lunchtime and you think, okay, I had some drinks at lunchtime, I broke that precept. And you just accept that. You say, okay, I broke that precept. Maybe next time I'll try to do better. So it doesn't mean everything has to be perfect all the time, but it just means that you recollect that generally speaking, that your conduct has been you've been trying to live your life in a way that's in accordance with Dhamma. Right? And so then you use that to then create that positive mind state and to say, okay, great, I feel happy about that, and then you begin your meditation. Okay? So that's one of the ways you can sort of turn it around. See, even like the things that, so you might think of something like, let's say you have an argument in the family, okay? Maybe you argue with your partner or argue with your children or something like that, okay? And then when you come to, and that's something that makes you feel really bad, right? And you feel really terrible, and you come to meditate and you're like, oh, why did I get this argument? That's terrible, I don't want to be someone who argues, right? And then you can reflect about that, right? You think, actually, why did I get into the argument, okay? And, well, number one reason that you get into arguments with people is because you love them, right? I mean, sometimes it's not true, sometimes you just yell at somebody on the road or something like that, but most of the time, we get into arguments because we care about people, we care about what happens to them, and maybe we have a difference of opinion or something like that. And so sometimes you can think, okay, maybe it wasn't a good idea, I shouldn't have argued like that, but at the same time, I did that because I cared, and I really did want what was best for everyone, maybe next time I can do it better, but you can recollect that. And so instead of that thing being something which is dragging you down, you then say, okay, next time I'll learn from that, next time I'll do it better. And then you turn that into a positive energy. Yeah? So this is that way that you can actually turn those things which should be, normally you think were dragging you down, and you turn it into something that's going to support you. Okay. Yeah?
It doesn't touch upon dream life.
Okay.
Mindful dreams, subconscious, half our life when we're asleep, or not. Doesn't go there.
That's true, yeah, it doesn't. I don't know, can you be mindful in dreams?
In lucid dreams you can sometimes.
Can you?
Yeah. You can meditate.
You can meditate in your dream?
I very rarely have these lucid dreams, but
Yeah.
it's when you're aware that you're dreaming, so you can meditate or you can
Okay. I do know a couple of cases of monks who told me stories where they meditated and they've had like a really powerful nimitta or something like that in their dream. And one monk told me once he was actually woke, he actually had a light, a nimitta came into his dream that was so powerful that it woke him up.
What's nimitta?
Like a bright light you see in meditation, yeah. So it's like this bright light came into his mind, it woke him up, he's like, wow, so he got up and meditated. So the mind's a funny place, yeah? So I mean, generally the Buddha didn't talk about that, but he just encouraged us to go to sleep mindfully. So when you lie down, you know, okay, I'm tired now, it's time to sleep, and you lie down mindfully, and then you pay attention to your breathing, so that you see if you can be mindful of your last breath. And the same thing when you wake up, then you see if you can catch your first breath when you wake up. Yeah.
Lion's posture, don't hear much about that these days.
Yeah, lying down.
More in favour of.
Yeah, it seems to have had some kind of significance which maybe is not entirely clear. Yeah, when the Buddha was talking about meditation, he always said to lie down on the right side in the lion's posture, one foot on top of the other. So obviously he's talking about sort of lying down in a kind of composed manner, but it never really sort of explains why on your right side rather than your left side, and these kinds of things. So perhaps that's why it's not really talked about. Perhaps the significance of it isn't really understood. Yeah. Radha.
Would it not bring my pressure to your heart?
Sorry?
Not my pressure to your heart?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I think if for some reason, I think it's also associated with. I'm just trying to remember context. Yeah. I won't say anything because I can't remember the background to it. Okay, any other questions? Moving along, so we'll look at the next question. Next section, which is quite similar, and which I've called in here awareness. And we had some discussion about this, Sampajanya, yesterday. And actually, in the discussion we had yesterday, I think somebody said the word situational awareness. Who was it that said that? It was you. I think that's actually right. I wasn't really familiar with the term, but I googled it when I got back to my room. And the basic definition of situational awareness is essentially identical with what Sampajanya is. Yeah. So I'm going to try using that for the translation now. We'll see how it goes. It's a bit of a buzzword, but it's very clear what it means.
I like contextual.
Textual awareness.
Context really is
Yeah. It just seems to be that's the accepted term. Yeah, it is used in psychology and so on. Yeah.
What does it mean?
Concept, situational awareness originally is that which makes one fighter pilot survive and the other one not. that's where it came from. Combat situations and things, but it's basically exactly what we're going to be talking about with Sampajanya. Yeah, and it was kind of became more of a concept that's used in psychology through the 90s, and there's a sort of accepted definition of it, which I can't recall at the moment, but it's essentially identical with what we're going to be talking about with Sampajanya. Yeah, basically aware of the context, aware of the situation, aware also like of the purpose and the flow of the situation. So it's not just right now, but it's also where are you going? What's the meaning of? What's the purpose of the situation? You know, how do you move towards the right outcome, and how does what you're doing now relate to the outcome that you want from the situation? Yeah. So so it's used a lot in contexts like sports and things like that. Okay, let's have a look at what the passage says. Okay, furthermore, when a monastic goes out and returns, they do so with awareness. Okay, so let's maybe try translating it. When the monastic goes out and returns, they act with situational awareness. When looking to the front and to the side, they act with situational awareness. When bending and extending their limbs, they act with situational awareness. When wearing the robes and carrying the bowl and outer robe, they act with situational awareness. When eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, they act with situational awareness. When defecating and urinating, they act with situational awareness. When walking, standing, sitting, lying down, waking up, speaking, and keeping silent, they do so with situational awareness. And so on with the refrain, as with all of the sections. So we can see, on the one hand, that this is obviously overlaps with the previous practice, but it's more specific, and it's perhaps more it's more context dependent. Now, in fact, the basic description when it talks about going, there's a couple of typos there. It's good to see. When it talks about going out and returning and things like this, it's explicitly talking about the normal monastic practices, especially the practice of going for alms round. It's not just any old thing. It's actually describing what a monk or a nun does when they do their alms round in the morning. And so this, in the context of the monastic life as a whole, this is basically the most exciting thing that happens to you in the whole day, right? So the rest of the day, you're in the monastery doing your meditation and things like that. So this is where you get to go out, right? And you get to actually do something, okay? And you get to see exciting things in the village, right? And hear the sounds and all of those things. And then you get to have a lovely, delicious meal and so on. So it's the most fun you get to have all day, right? And so this is why specifically this practice is being emphasized here. And there are other places we find in the suttas where the same list of actions is given, but it's given as a list of instructions for how a monastic is to behave. Okay, so it says that when a young monk or nun is ordained, that the senior monks and nuns should take them and they should give them instruction and guidance. When you go out and return, then this is how you should do it. When you're wearing the robes, this is how you should do it, and so on and so forth. So it's actually like an instructions in monastic conduct and behaviour. Obviously, it goes without saying that it can be extended beyond that, and it applies more generally. That's should be self-evident. But just so that we understand that that's why it mentions these particular actions here. So going out and returning means going out into the village for your alms round and returning, looking to the front and to the side. And so this is when you're going for alms round, the general idea is that you should mainly keep your eyes downcast and not be sort of looking around too much. So if you need to look to the side, you do so mindfully. But you also have to be aware of context, right? Because if you're walking for alms, and this is something that happens all the time, it's very common, somebody's about to get some food that they want to offer you or something like that, and you have to sort of catch it out of the corner of your eye, that you see somebody's gone into their house to get something, or you see some movement somewhere or something like that. Because obviously it's very impolite to sort of, you just keep on walking down the street and somebody comes out with some rice and they're like, oh, I thought there was, and then they haven't got anyone to offer it to, so that's not very nice. So you have to sort of be aware. So like when I do alms round in Sydney and I go down King Street and things like that, and you usually go and, sometimes just on the street people will come to you, or you go to the restaurant or something like that, Thai restaurant, and then you notice, they're getting ready and they're preparing the food and this kind of thing. And so this is sort of that kind of awareness. So when bending and extending the limbs, when wearing your robes, carrying the bowl and the outer robe. So just just a point of detail here is that when it talks about the robes, generally speaking, the Buddhist monks and nuns have 3 main robes. This is the upper robe, the Uttara Sangha. They have a lower robe, it's called the Antaravasaka, and the outer robe is a double robe, which you'll see me wrapping around myself on a cold morning, and so that's what they call the outer robe, and that's like a double layered one. So they're the 3 basic robes. So we can have other requisites like jackets and things like that. Well, we actually can't have jackets. Jackets are actually illegal. Shh, don't tell anybody. But various other things are allowable. Okay, what else? Wearing the robes, when eating, drinking, chewing and tasting. So again, just being mindful while eating, and then cause and effect, right? So mindful while eating, and then mindful while crapping afterwards. So this is the understanding the whole nature of the process. And you know, part of it is that whole awareness of food, right? You've gone into the village to get your arms around and get your food, and so you're actually seeing that whole kind of process from beginning to end. And then finally, by talking more generally, everything you're doing in the day, standing, sitting, waking up, speaking, and keeping silent, and so on.
It's a situation where it's a military sort of you might want to introduce it at the top and just use awareness all through. You're talking about defecating and urinating from the situation awareness. To me, it's like a well-planned mission.
Right. It should be a well-planned mission.
It's weird. Situation awareness is becoming more and more popular with deployment of sensors and things. So
with what, sorry?
With all the Internet of Things and more sensors.
Okay.
You know, smart cities.
Right.
Situation awareness.
Yeah.
It's going to get a technology.
That's right, it does. Yeah, that's right. It's being used in that way. The technology is situation awareness, but why not toilets should have situation awareness as well?
So you can plan out your mission to go to the toilet.
But the toilet, you could program the toilet to have situation awareness, right?
Analysing the.
So you know that if they've ordered curry for the meal today, that there's going to be situation later on.
So some people analyse their stools. Health.
Exactly, yeah.
I'd say that was situation. So people have detected early intestinal diseases through analysing the stools.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Is that connected with the
Sure, why not?
Well, from your scholarship, do you believe that this section was originally part of the Sutta?
No, I think that these 2 sections were probably not. They're usually, and especially this one on the full awareness or situational awareness, is typically found as an introduction to meditation, that I mentioned before. Yeah, so part of the preparation practices. So very important, but important as a preparation. Yeah.
After this situational awareness, are you talking about being aware of the situation?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So think about that example of say a monk or a nun who's going for alms round, yeah? And think, what's the situation, right? So they understand, okay, I'm going into the village. I'm not going into the village just to hang out, right? I'm not just going just to, go and visit friends or whatever, go to the pub or something like that. So you know what the purpose is, right? Well, you might go and stand outside the pub for hours, but you're not going to go and have a drink. And so first of all, you have an awareness of what's appropriate, okay? And you have an awareness of what's the purpose of what I'm doing. Right? And then you have like an awareness of where it is that you're going, what time it is, and all of those kinds of things. And so it's that kind of all-round awareness of your context. Yeah.
How do you develop it?
How do you develop it? Tell me, how do you develop it?
You've kind of got to know what your role is in a way, and have an agenda, which I don't like about situational description, because a monk or nun doesn't necessarily have an agenda.
Well, you do. You want to eat.
Oh, yeah.
That's an agenda.
That's true. But beyond that, I mean, if it was me, I'd be thinking, well, no, this is my role, I'm going to get through, but then why? And then why? And then it comes down to why are we alive?
Okay, yeah.
So I have to go back to the monastery and contemplate.
And they've become like so complicated, and all you wanted to do was have a bit of rice to eat. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Just it's a simple thing. It's a simple practice. It's not an advanced practice.
It would evolve from our awareness postures, wouldn't it?
That's right. Yeah. You know what you're doing. You know why you're doing it. Understand the context. So, Nilusha, what do you do when you go into work and you've got to make a presentation, some project you've been working on?
Aware of the purpose and what I'm trying to achieve.
Right. Make sure you have the materials you need. Yeah. Make sure you're dressed appropriately. Yeah. It's the same as it mentions here, wearing the robes and things like that. Yeah. Yeah. And then if you go in and you need to talk to people, and you try to, articulate clearly and try to use language and ideas that people will understand and will, persuade them in the right way. So that's all part of what you're doing with situational awareness. So like I said, we don't. It's not a. These things are very ordinary. It's an ordinary thing. So it's just drawing attention to the fact that they're these ordinary things that we do anyway. But if we can become more conscious of them, then it helps. It helps you to just remember, okay, this is what I'm doing. And so then again it becomes something which is supporting your practice. So when you do those things, maybe at work or maybe at home or maybe if you're shopping, we talked about this the other day, that's a good example where you frequently you have an idea what you want to shop and buy, and then you get distracted and you end up doing all of these other things, right? So having good situational awareness would be knowing, okay, this is actually what I need to go to the shopping centre for. And so you go there and you do that and then you come back. Right? And
So pushing the boundaries of situational awareness, someone who has a lot would be able to quickly adapt to shifts and changes.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
And also, I'm just interested where intuition comes in, because that's sort of taking in the rising conditions for a bigger change before the change has happened.
Yeah.
So I'm just brought to mind a friend of mine. I think she has great awareness, and I've just observed that in her. So she's not just in the present, she's sort of already intuiting them. It's hard to explain.
I know what you mean. Yeah, you turn around and they're already in the place that they should be.
Yeah.
While you're still trying to figure out where it is they should be. Yeah. And that relates to what I said before about that was the origin of the concept of situational awareness was understanding how fighters work in dogfights, and how pilots work in dogfights. Yeah. And what they said that the crucial thing was that if you have that situational awareness, you know what the other guy is doing before they do it. Yeah, because you understand that context. Actually, if they're turning this way, what are they trying to get out of that? Why are they turning that way? Yeah?
Understand the mindset and outcome.
That's right. Yeah. So that's why they started to sort of investigate it. But yeah, can be used for other things then.
Was that in World War II?
I think it was in World War II that they first started looking at it. I just looked at it briefly, and it's just at the Wikipedia entry just yesterday. So. Okay, so. Any more questions on that one before we move on? Okay, so the next one is paying attention to the repulsive, particular sanya. The word repulsive that I've translated here, particular, is not actually found in the text itself. So notice that when we're reading these texts, that we have the actual, the words of the sutta, and then you have these different titles, right? So the titles are all added by later editors, right? They're not part of the actual text. And in some cases, you can see interesting differences. So you have this idea of the repulsive, and that, that's difficult to translate that in any other way. The word used there, but the word that's actually used for repulsive is not found in the text itself, right? That's a word which a later tradition used to summarize things, right? But if you look at it, the actual imagery that's used in the text itself is not really repulsive imagery, it's more just seeing things as they are. Anyway, let's have a look at it. Furthermore, a monastic examines their own body up from the soles of the feet, down from the hairs of the head, and surrounded by skin as full of various kinds of impurities, asuchino. In this body there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, intestines, mesentery, undigested food, feces, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spit, snot, synovial fluid, and urine. Okay? So then the simile is given. It is as if there was a bag with openings at both ends, filled with various kinds of grains, such as hill rice, wheat, mung beans, peas, millet, and white rice. And someone with good eyesight were to open it and examine the contents. This is hill rice, this is wheat, these are mung beans, these are peas, this is millet, and this is white rice. In the same way, a monastic examines their own body up from the soles of the feet, down from the hairs of the head, surrounded by skin, as full of various kinds of impurities. In this body there are head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, intestines, mesentery, undigested food, feces, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spit, snot, synovial fluid, and urine. So this is another practice. Now, this particular practice is very important within the Buddhist tradition. It's the basic meditation which is taught to new monastics when they ordain. And based on historical analysis of the sutta, my conclusion was that probably this was the first or the original meditation found in this section on body contemplation. It's the only one which is found in all of the versions of the text. So here what you're doing is that you're looking at your body, looking at the different parts of your body, and then you're taking apart this kind of illusion that we have of our bodies as being something which is sort of inherently beautiful or wonderful or something like that, and you take it apart and you realise actually it's just all of these different parts which work together. And I mean, at the same time, right, your body is pretty amazing, like all of those different bits, like livers are pretty amazing things, right? And so are spleens, and so are all of them. They're quite incredible, and the more you go into them, they're all highly sophisticated, complex, amazing things that work together in all these incredible ways, right? So that's not to deny that, but it's just to look at it to understand that that's what's going on. This is what your body consists of. So this meditation is done, can be done in many different ways. One way that it can be done is by reciting, so that you can memorize, say, one part of it, say one section at a time, if you like. Typically they start with the first 5, which are the external ones: head, hair, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, because these are the ones you can see externally, and so you memorize those. And so you can recite those individually, you're sitting in meditation, and just get a clear idea of each one of those as you recite them. So you go head, hairs, and just stay with head, hairs, so head, head, and then just pay attention to the hairs of your head. And you can kind of feel them, you kind of imagine what they look like, you can get a perception of them, and so on. And then when you've got a clear idea of that in your mind, you go to head, hairs, body hairs, And then you imagine the different hairs on your body. So you've got like an inner perception of these things. And you sort of stay with that until you have a reasonably clear perception of that. And then you can go through the list like that. So that's one common way of doing that kind of meditation. If you find that there are, so you don't have to do it for all of these different parts. If you find that there's one part or other which is very clear to you or that you want to meditate, you can just meditate on one part. In fact, very commonly, people will meditate on the skeleton. It's probably the most common one that people do. But if you just want to meditate on your teeth or something like that, then you could just do that. Meditate on one particular body part. Sometimes a particular part of the body might become very clear, like you're meditating, and suddenly it will start to, the different parts of the body can start to feed back at you. Okay? They start to shine. Right? They start to become more and more aware. What actually happens is that psychologically, what's going on is that your mind has a very deep level attachment to your body. Okay, and so we carry around this attachment, and because of that attachment, then like any attachment, it leads us into various kinds of suffering and so on. We get afraid, and our body's being threatened, and all of these kinds of things, and we're afraid of dying, and all of this stuff. When you're meditating and you're seeing it clearly as it is, your mind lets go of that attachment, okay? And you become more to actually see something. And because you're letting go of the attachment, because you're letting go of the hindrances, then the mind will become clear, and you'll actually start to see that thing much more clearly. And it's an unusual meditation. Like unlike most meditations that we do more commonly, like loving-kindness meditation or breath meditation, then it's something which is inherently pleasant, right, and inherently soothing. Whereas these things, parts of the body, they're not inherently pleasant or soothing, right? They're either kind of neutral, like hair or something like that, or else it's something which is maybe even a bit disgusting, like looking at your own feces or something like that. But no matter what those parts of the body are, we have some kind of attachment to them. And when you meditate, you learn gradually you're letting go of that attachment. And it's because you're letting go of the attachment, suddenly it starts to become very joyful. Like you might go through periods in the meditation, like it uses this word repulsive, and I have a problem with that word repulsive to describe this meditation. Not because it's incorrect, but because it's incomplete. Okay? Actually, there are parts of the body which you do see as repulsive, and but there are other parts which you don't. And you go through periods, if you're doing this meditation, you go through periods where that repulsion actually comes up very strongly, right? And you'll actually feel like a disgust with your body. I can feel like turning away from it, like, yuck, what? I have to walk around carrying this thing with me all the time, right? But that's just like that's not what the meditation's about. That's like a stage in your meditation, right? It's like detaching you or severing you from that kind of attachment that you have, right? And at the other side of that, you then everything starts to glow. Everything starts to come alive, and it becomes a very joyful meditation. And so when this meditation deepens, you can actually look at these things and have an incredible amount of pleasure that comes just from contemplating these different parts of the body. Because you realize actually it's just a body, it's just there, it all just kind of works together and so on. So that aspect of repulsiveness is there, but it's only one aspect of the practice, it's not the whole practice. Actually, if you look at this is a little bit kind of, perhaps not beside the point, but if you look at the Buddhist teachings that relate to the body, then you can see that those teachings sort of encompass the whole kind of range of things, right? Buddhism always teaches, one of the basic frameworks of understanding the Dhamma is that you see the gratification in something, okay? The asada, the sweet taste of something. You see the dangers, the drawbacks of it, and you see the escape from it, right? So you can't understand something until you understand it in those three ways, right? What's nice about it, what's delightful, what's the drawbacks, the dangers of it, and what's the escape. Okay, so sometimes it can seem as if in Buddhism, in relation to the body, that it's very negative, right? That you're looking at these negative sides of it. And the reason why that's the case is because most of the time we like to focus on the positive. We like to focus on the gratification of the body. Okay, so we like to focus on delicious food, or cosmetics and nice clothes and having sex and all of those things that people like to enjoy with their bodies. Okay, so that's what people like to focus on most of the time. So as a balancing for that, we say, okay, there's also this other side of the body. Okay? The body gets old, it falls apart, it gets sick. It's made up of all these different bits and so on and so forth. And so you do that in order to get a more balanced perspective on the body. Not because that's the only truth about the body, but because that's an important truth that we normally neglect. Okay? But the real understanding comes when you see the escape, when you see what lies beyond that. Okay? So you can see actually in the Buddhist texts on meditation that they have these kind of balanced attitudes towards the body. There are many places in the suttas where it talks about experiencing pleasure with your body. Okay? And the whole practice on breath meditation is a practice of using that aspect of your body and developing and feeling pleasure, and you feel that rapture throughout your whole body. And so this is something which is found many, many times right throughout the suttas. So don't think that the Buddhist practice has a kind of a negative or anti-attitude towards the body. We have an attitude of trying to see it in balance, okay? Trying to see the different aspects of it, so that we're not sort of overly infatuated and attached to it, but nor should you be sort of negative and disgusted with it, but we appreciate the body for what it is. And the body's here ultimately it's our vehicle to Nibbana, so it's something that we should look after and we should respect. Heidi?
It actually has implications for compassion as well, because I think, when you've got that concept of the body that society promotes, that young and beautiful, you can be repulsed by old people, dying people, that sort of thing. Whereas when you get a more balanced view, you can, you have more compassion and love for those forms.
And not just for old and dying people, but for yourself as well, right? I mean, this is the negative side of all of this thing. It is very well known, we have all of these unrealistic body images that's promoted through the media and stuff, and all of the kind of the hassle that especially women go through, trying to live up to these unrealistic ideals. You choose the world's most beautiful women, and then you Photoshop the hell out of them, and you say, oh, why don't I look like that, Yeah. Yes.
It's also good for practicing oneself.
Sorry?
It's also good for practicing oneself, where
Yes.
you take each part of the body and keep it aside, and then try to find where the pika is, because which part.
That's right, yeah.
As in the automobil analogy, because when you pull apart a car, you got the engine and the wheels, and then it's not a car engine by itself, so it's a good practice to find that.
That's right, yeah.
So integration and disintegration.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so both aspects are there. Incidentally, just point out that simile of the cart taken apart was by Bhikkhuni Vajira, so one of the most famous similes in Buddhism is from one of the Bhikkhunis. But also very cool that the Bhikkhuni was she knew about mechanics and engineering, right? It wasn't like a simile about flower arrangements or dressmaking or something like that. She knew what carts were and how to take it apart and put it back together.
Bhante, what you just said about the title, why are you keeping it? Because it's discussed. I mean, that kind of concept seems to be quite prominent in some Thai Buddhism discourses, right?
It is, yeah.
So if it's incongruent with the original teachings, it sounds problematic.
It is. It's an issue, and I'm not entirely sure. I mean, generally speaking, when I'm doing my translation project, the project is to make a simple English translation of this particular text, and that's what this text says. There are some places where I have some issues with the received text as we have it. It's not the text that I put together if I was doing one, but I'm not. So Yeah, so not entirely. Yeah.
I'm just like paying attention to the reality of the body or something like that.
Can, except that's not what it says.
But you're saying it's not, it wasn't actually there.
No, but that's not my project. My project isn't to say what was originally there. My project is to say, let's translate this text as we have it. Yeah. It's a slippery slope, right? How many of these details are you going to change, right? You might want to say, okay, I want to try to, reconstitute the original early Buddhist text of these things. But that's like a massive project. If you want to do that with integrity, it's a massive project. I would hope maybe that in the future that somebody could, it's one of the reasons why I'm making my translation an open translation. So that once I've done that, I need to be very clear and consistent in how I'm approaching my translation project. If somebody then maybe thinks, okay, I'm going to do this and take it and take these bits out and so on and come closer to what the original text was, then that would be a good thing to do. Yeah. I'll have a think about it. It's not entirely fixed, but that's anyway. That's just why I do it that way. Yeah.
Could you say paying attention to the intricacy of the body? Intricacy?
You could.
You could.
Once again, that's not what the text says.
No. And for me, one way I find it helpful to look at the body is comical. Like the second paragraph, it's like a sausage with an orifice at each end.
Well, that's right. It is kind of amusing, isn't it? Right? That thing is like a bag with openings at either end. Yeah.
Yes.
Filled with different kinds of grain. Yeah.
You said that when you meditate on a particular part of the body, you become more aware of it, but that's because you're getting attached to it. How can you explain that? It's like saying someone is the skeleton.
So
You said that when somebody sees, for example, the skeleton while meditating, that it's because you're getting attached to that particular part of the body. How does that happen?
how does that happen?
Yeah. Can you explain how that happens?
It just does.
So because you're getting detached to it, you see it more clearly?
You see it more clearly, yeah. Because the hindrances are what cloud your mind. So it's all those hindrances, which are obviously result from the attachment you have to your body, then they cloud your mind, confuse it, they stop you from seeing clearly, right? And as the more that you see it clearly, the more you stay with it, and the idea becomes clearer, then the hindrances gradually drop away, and then it becomes more and more clear. And that manifests, right? The way that becomes apparent to your mind by not only the thing appearing clear and feeling clear, but it also starts to get an emotional tone, just like the breath does, right? When you're starting to watch your breath, your breath is just air. It doesn't have any emotion to it. And if you just ask somebody, what's the emotion of your breath? People, it's kind of crazy. It's just air. Well, it doesn't have any emotion, right? But as you go deeper into the breath meditation, you see the pleasure in it and it starts to glow, it starts to become bright. And that's just perception. That's just because your hindrances are becoming abandoned, but that's where the lightness comes from and the joy comes from. And it's the same thing when you're watching the parts of your body. You watch them as the hindrances fall away, the attachment falls away, your mind becomes clear. And as your mind becomes clear, that's how it manifests. The perception of light, the perception of pleasure and so on becomes more common.
So you look at it objectively rather than saying it's not wisdom.
Sorry?
You look at it more objectively rather than saying it's mine or your part.
Yes, but that's not what your experience is. Your experience is that the thing becomes clear. Right? So you're not saying to yourself, "Oh, now I'll look at it more objectively" or anything like that. It's just as you're watching it, the thing that you're watching becomes clear.
I can't hear half of these questions. I don't know if people can speak up a little bit. I'm relying on your answers to work out how this dialogue's going.
So can we have some lessons in enunciation?
Yeah.
Okay, I will try to repeat the questions. It's probably a good idea for the recording as well. Yeah. Okay.
Can you do this meditation? It was a meditation. You have a
So the question is, can we do this as a guided meditation? Yes, we can. Whether we will or not is another question, but yes, we can. No, I'll try to do a few of these body contemplations as guided meditations. Yes?
But see someone who's obsessed with manicure and to do this type of meditation, is that person need to concentrate on the nails because they clearly know that attachment to the nails and
Sure.
thinking about the nails and during the meditation.
Sure, yeah. So the question, if you're obsessed with getting manicure, should you meditate on your nails? Yes. Yeah.
So just keep thinking and bring the awareness of the nails
Into your mind, yeah. But not in the sense of like, oh, I can polish them, what's the latest colour, that kind of thing. But yeah, and that's exactly what the traditional text will recommend. So if you're for example really into food and you when you sit to meditate and you can't stop thinking about eating, right? And this is very common, right? When young monks come along to the monastery, I can't speak for nuns, they'll have to speak for themselves, but certainly for the young monks who come to the monastery, it's the main thing that we spend our time thinking about in meditation, usually for the first few years, okay? You think it would be sex, but no, it's food. And you're sitting there so it's a recommended meditation. So you do that meditation, and you can do it in a number of ways. So you might meditate on that whole process. What do you have to do to eat, and you get the food, and you go for arms round, and you come, and it's put in your bowl, and then you pick it out of your bowl, and you put it in your mouth, and as soon as you put it in your mouth, it's covered with saliva. Right? If you were to take it out of your mouth and put it on a plate and offer it to somebody else at that time, right? Okay? Yeah. Right? And that's so the food's only delicious for those few minutes that it's sitting there when you're about to eat it, right? And the rest of the time it's terrible. And then things only get worse from there. Okay? And so you're just going to follow that whole kind of process through, and you just sort of do that reflection, and so that helps you to to not be so obsessed with it. And so again, so the same thing with different parts of your body. So if you're really attached to your skin complexion or something like that, then you just use that. You just reflect on it. You say, no matter how much you look after it, no matter how much you do your hair, you're going to get split ends. It just happens. Yeah? And yeah. Yes, Nicola.
Did you give any credence to, and it's probably not the right phrase, let me rephrase that. What is your opinion on the story of the mass suicide of monks that arose out of their intense contemplation? I know that in some stories there was a third party involved that kind of encouraged them. But given, it's not so far off from where there were some people in the world today who's discussed with their body. It's so intense they do dreadful things to it. And sometimes that culminates in their own personal attempts or completion of suicide. So I guess there's two things. Firstly, do you think that story is accurate from the time of the Buddha? And my understanding is that there's something about that. And also, what are the cautions we should have around it today?
Okay, so just to repeat Nicola's question, she's asking about a passage in the Vinaya where a bunch of the monks do this meditation and end up committing suicide and or killing each other. And I'll tell you the story in a minute. And so Nicola's asking, A, is this a real story? And B, what are the lessons we're supposed to draw from it? Okay, so thank you for bringing it up. It is one of the more entertaining stories found in the Vinaya. And one of the things about Vinaya is that Vinaya is essentially, or a large part of the Vinaya anyway, is a legal code, and it's into kind of definition of terms and all of these kinds of things, and it all gets very dry and boring. But then you have stories like this that make it all worthwhile. And Vinaya has the most outrageous and colourful stories found in the whole Buddhist tradition. But one of the stories was that the Buddha gave a teaching on this body contemplation, and then he told the monks, okay, I'm going to go away on retreat. And so he said he'd go away on retreat, and the only monk who should see him is the monk who's bringing him his food. So this is something that the Buddha would do from time to time. Just go for a retreat, stay in his hut, and just meditate. And elsewhere he told the monks, if anybody asks what I'm doing, tell them that I'm watching my breath go in and out. So anyway, so the Buddha goes off on retreat, okay, and the monks all do this meditation, and as they're doing it, they became disgusted with their bodies and wanted to get rid of them. And there was a attendant or somebody living in the monastery who offered to help the monks solve their problems. And so he took the knife and he said, please come to me, Venerable Sirs, anybody who wants to be delivered, and go over to the far shore. And so many of the monks were killed by this fellow, or else they killed themselves. And the whole monastery was like a charnel ground filled with the bodies of all of these dead monks. Anyway, so the Buddha was off on retreat while all this was happening. And when the retreat was finished, he came out and saw Venerable Ananda, and he said to Venerable Ananda, Ananda, the Sangha seems strangely depleted. So you've got to appreciate the dry sense of humour in the Vinaya, right? And Ananda says to the Buddha, it would be good if the Buddha would teach another kind of meditation. Yeah, that's not a paraphrase, that's literally what the Vinaya says. So the Buddha then, the monks come together and the Buddha brings them to the hall and he teaches them breath meditation. And says it's a breath meditation, it's a calm and peaceful and pleasant abiding. Yeah? So, is that story real? Did it actually happen? Not really sure, and I've never seen any satisfactory studies on it. However, I have heard of one, and apparently Richard Gombrich gave a paper on this very topic in Oxford recently, and that will be, or is being written up as a paper. But I did contact him recently to see if I could get a copy, and it wasn't ready. So. I was told that by Lisa, if you remember Lisa Fancott, she was at Santi some quite a few years ago now. Anyway, maybe you don't know her. Anyway, so Lisa told me about it, and so hopefully that will solve the problem. I don't know. Anyway, maybe give us some interesting insight into it. I haven't seen any comparative studies done on it, so I couldn't really say how authentic it is. In one respect, I mean, obviously it's completely outrageous, and it would be highly improbable that it actually happened in the way that it's depicted, right? On the other hand, there is a principle in text critical studies that things that don't reflect well on that source, right, or that appear to be unusual or inexplicable, are more likely to be authentic. Okay. It's less likely to be invented as a sort of propaganda exercise, but more likely to have some recollection of something that actually happened. So perhaps there was some case where perhaps one or more of the monks did actually do something like that as a result of the meditation or something, and then it's been kind of exaggerated into the story that we have it today. I tend to think that in many of these cases there was some kind of background to them. In some cases there may be just stories that made up to illustrate a point, but often there might have been some background, but perhaps not all of the details that we have from today. Anyway, we'll see what Professor Gombrich comes up with his interpretation. But anyway, as far as the practical aspects of it, I think it was summarised very nicely by Lumpur Panyawado, who is a very senior English monk who passed away a number of years ago. When we saw him in Thailand many years ago, he summarised the situation quite nicely, and he said that the Buddha said that if you wanted to do these meditation on the parts of the body, then that's okay, but just make sure you do some breath meditation as well. There's a nice little summary of it. Yeah. And so it's just all about balance. Yeah? So that is that practice, can, like I said before, it does have that phase or that aspect of it where you will see the body as repulsive and disgusting. And if your mind isn't in balance, then yeah, that can be dangerous. So that's why there always needs to be those positive meditations, and that's why they're the ones we always lead with. Breath meditation and metta. They're very safe. They don't have any drawbacks. But I think you're quite right that this certainly can be connected with different issues people can have, and self-harming and things like that. And for that reason, I'd be very, very reluctant. I really wouldn't teach these things very much unless I was sort of confident about the people that I was teaching it to. Heidi.
I used to find this a very abstract meditation until I gutted a chicken that my husband had killed in the backyard.
I thought you were going to say until I had this insight in my meditation or something like that.
No, because it sort of really made you understand why it's called paying attention to repulsive, because such a striking difference between the inside of the body to what you see, the external.
Yeah. That's right, yeah, so just for the recording, Heidi was saying this meditation was very abstract until she gutted a chicken. Yeah. And I think as a result of that, I think in Buddhist countries, typically, at least up till now, there has been a more kind of sane attitude towards the body and its things than you find in Western cultures, where we've sort of developed this kind of almost sort of neurotic wanting to hide the body away, cover it up, plastic surgery and makeup and everything, and then when someone dies and you make them up and they look much more beautiful than they had when they were alive. When we did this one funeral when we were in Bodhinyana one time, and one of the prominent Thai members of the Buddhist Society had died, this old man. And by the time he'd been, we all filed part of the casket to look at the casket, and by the time he'd been done up and everything, he looked completely different. And he was standing there, meditating on the dead body, and then the senior monk who was there, Sajjanyana Dhammo, and he just whispered to me, "He looks like John Howard." And he really did. And so we were standing there trying not to giggle. I remember when I first went to Thailand and I was in Chiang Mai, and in the main city square in Chiang Mai at the time, they had some kind of expo or exhibition, and part of it they had these medical exhibition, and they had these two corpses which were just out on display in the middle of the city, right? And it's just like in the public, it was just in the open air in the public, and they were like cut open with all their organs everywhere and things like that. And you just sort of, people wandering around, here's the, exhibit on the cultural history of Chiang Mai or something like that, and here's this, and then here's some dead bodies with all the bits all over the place. And, I thought, something I haven't seen in Australia recently. But they did have that, what do they call it, those plasticized bodies, which they had the expo, so that's still going around the world probably. And that was very popular, so people, I think that there is an interest to see and understand. Okay, any other questions or comments on that section?
When I talk about the repulsiveness of nutriment, is that an accurate? Is that a good rendering of the word repulsive?
Of the which one? What?
When they talk about repulsiveness of nutriment.
Of nutriment? Yeah, it's the same word, it's patikula. Yeah, ahare patikula sanya. Yeah, and patikula probably should be translated as repulsive. Yeah.
Is repulsiveness, is it connected to aversion then? Is it some kind of a subtle aversion?
It is, yeah.
Is it
If it's working properly in part of the path, then it's a wholesome aversion. Okay? Yeah, so you can have, so remember with these things, we talk about greed, hatred and delusion, but they're all things which give rise to suffering. Okay, so just as, not all forms of desire are unwholesome. Right? So if you have a desire to practice the Dhamma or something like that, that's a wholesome desire, and that's actually leading towards liberation. So it's the same thing. You can have like a wholesome kind of aversion, where you have like an aversion to, to things that are creating suffering or something like that. So it's not, if that emotion is prominent, then it's not yet in balance. Right? So again, it's a point that it's not complete, right? But it's still going to be part of that path as you're going along.